In October of 2021, Venom, Let There Be Carnage finally released. The film had been delayed for almost 2 years and introduced fan favourite villain Carnage. While the film, like its predecessor, hadn't exactly been the most critically acclaimed film of all time, it was well received by audiences and fans of the comics alike. Despite flaws such as pacing and writing in some areas, I thought the film was really fun and enjoyed the characters a lot, including the returning cast of Anne, Dan, and Mrs. Chen. God, I love Mrs. Chen, she's so cool. I'm sure, like a lot of other people, the thing I was looking forward to seeing the most in the film was Carnage and how they would adapt him to the big screen. And when the film finally released and I got to see it on the big screen, I was excited, happy, but most of all, something felt off. And, well, that can be placed on a lot of different elements of the film. For me, the main thing that stuck out was the way Carnage was characterised, especially compared to his comic counterpart. And that's the exact reason why I decided to make a video discussing the differences between Carnage in the comics and in the film, as well as other ways that I would change the movie's version without drastically altering it too much, to better fit the comics and make the story flow a little bit better. But before we can do any of that, we have to understand Carnage's character in the comics, and why the changes made to that character are so important. In the comics, Carnage made his first full debut in Amazing Spider-Man 361 in April of 1992. Carnage was created by David Michelinie, the writer, and drawn by artist Mark Bagley. In the comics, Carnage's only goal is to kill as many people as possible and create utter chaos. The host, Cletus Cassidy, gets his symbiote first during a prison break where Venom escapes and spawns at the same time, causing the cut on Cletus's hand to get infected with Carnage. As a child, Cletus was abused heavily, which led to him killing his grandmother, torturing her dog, and killing his mother. Carnage has a very different build to Venom and is a lot slimmer, smaller, and more agile. He also has the ability to shapeshift and form weapons with his appendages. Due to the fact that Cletus and his symbiote are bound on a molecular level, they are able to shapeshift a lot more easily than Venom and Eddie Brock. This can be seen when Carnage literally travels through a wire in the comics. As well as this, because they are bonded so deeply, Carnage refers to himself as I rather than we, as Venom does. These key differences prevent Carnage from being compared to Venom in such a direct way. For example, a lot of people would simply compare Carnage to be a red Venom if he and Venom shared the same characteristics. Red Venom comparisons even go as far to the point that fans would often recreate images of Carnage by just inverting the colour of Venom from the Spider-Man 3 movie in 2007 and the 2018 movie. I'm sure a lot of you will remember this, but when Spider-Man 4 was originally going to come out, a lot of fan-made trailers featured just a red version of Venom as Carnage. That's a lot of nostalgia right there. Carnage was originally created with the intention of being a crazier, more violent Venom, originally having names conceptualized as Chaos and Ravage. Carnage's red design is supposed to represent danger and threat, as well as the black marks indicating fluidity and how the symbiote is actually bonded with Cassidy's blood. Now we've looked at Carnage in the comics, we can now look at the movie and see why it's different and why the changes made are so significant. The movie's version of the character still retains a lot of the characteristics of the character from the comics. For example, the backstory is very similar. One of the best, most creative scenes in the film, we see Cletus's upbringing, and it includes him killing his grandmother, her dog, and his mother. One major change, however, is that Carnage and Shriek have known each other for most of their lives, which is not present in the comics. As well as this, Carnage's character is often defined by his love for Shriek, which is very different to how the comics work. In the movie, Cletus gets his symbiote by biting Venom in his holding cell before his execution. This is obviously different to the comics, but I don't think it's a bad change and fits the narrative of the movie better. The differences between the two versions of the character really start to shine through when Cletus finally gets the symbiote. The clearest and most obvious difference is that Cletus and Carnage are not bonded properly, even less so than Eddie and Venom are. The depth of the bond between Cletus and his symbiote was so important because it made them more terrifying and a lot more of a threat, which is undermined in the actual film because it is the exact way that they are defeated. As well as this, Carnage ends up getting killed by Venom, which would make sense in the context of the film, because there's no way that Venom would let him live. But still, it was a little bit upsetting for Carnage to be just a one-off villain. I really liked the design of Carnage in the film, although I would definitely have made some changes to make it more accurate to the comics and give it a more iconic look. For example, Carnage is mostly red in the film, lacking a lot of the black that separates his costume in the comics. If I was able to change the design of the character in any way, I would have made a lot more improvements to the black in the suit. I'd have made it flowing around his chest, and I think that would have looked a little bit closer to the comics. Another thing that I would change is that I would make Carnage a lot smaller. This would be more in keeping with the look of Venom and Carnage in the comics, where Venom is a lot taller and bulkier, and Carnage is a lot skinnier and smaller. But if Carnage had to remain tall, I would have made him even skinnier, and that would give him a more uncanny appearance. I really liked the film's inclusion of Carnage's weapon hands. They looked really good in the final film, and they made good use of it. I didn't like how low-pitched and deep Carnage's voice was in the film though. I feel like it should have been higher pitched and more demonic, and that would have been a lot more frightening. This can be seen in the 90s animated Spider-Man show, where Carnage has a higher pitched, more demonic voice, and it's the voice that I mimicked in my stop motion that I made a couple weeks back. The fact that Cletus and his symbiote talk to one another makes sense within the context of the film, but doesn't feel right with the character in the comics. It really hammers home that they are two separate entities in the movie, which is very different from the comics and makes them less unique. Don't get me wrong though, I think Carnage was a lot better of a villain than Riot was in the first movie. A cool detail I noticed while watching the film was that during the fight in the cathedral, Carnage moves a bit like a spider, and that really spoke to me because of how agile he seemed, and that seemed very accurate to the comics. Overall, I did enjoy seeing Carnage on the big screen for the first time, and I think they did a decent job at adapting him, although, considering it's the only time we've ever seen Carnage on the big screen, and it might be the same case for a long while, I feel like they could have done better at adapting him and making him more accurate to his comic counterpart. But what did you all think? Did you enjoy seeing Carnage on the big screen? Did you think he was adapted well, or do you think they should have done better? I'm aware that this is a very different kind of video for my channel, and I hope you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see more, let me know. I'll be back to making stop motions soon, but I just wanted to take a break from doing them for a little while so I could get a really good idea for my next one, which I think I have. Thank you for watching so much, it really means a lot to me. Bye.